On November 3, 2025, a semi-truck driver on Colorado's Wolf Creek Pass passed a runaway ramp 1.5 miles from the summit. Investigators still don't know for certain whether his brakes were already failing at that point, or whether the trouble started further down the grade. What they do know is that a quarter-mile short of a second ramp, the one truckers call the last chance ramp, his truck left the roadway and went down the hillside above a set of hairpin turns. Rescue crews had to anchor ropes to their own vehicles just to rappel down and reach the wreckage below. There were 2 ramps built specifically to save a driver in that exact situation, on that exact stretch of road. He didn't reach either one. That's the thing about the roads on this list. They don't hide what they are. The warning signs are posted a mile out. The runaway ramps are built and maintained. The weather advisories go out an hour before you get there. And drivers still go down year after year because a warning sign only works if you see it in time. And out here, in the dark, seeing it in time is never guaranteed. Tonight we're counting down 15 of the roads that professional truckers, the people who log more highway miles in a single month than most drivers rack up in a year, say they will not run after dark if they can avoid it. Not because they're afraid of the darkness itself, but because of what these specific roads do once the light goes. A curve that reads as manageable at 4 in the afternoon becomes something else entirely at 2 in the morning, when your headlights only reach 300 feet ahead and the grade drops away faster than that. Before we get into the list, if you've ever felt your foot go stiff on the brake pedal coming down a mountain grade, or watched a set of taillights ahead of you flare and then disappear off the shoulder into black ice, we want to hear about it. So drop a comment and tell us where you were when it happened. And if you want the rest of what we dig up on America's most punishing roads, now's a good moment to hit subscribe. Because we're about to move from the ordinary kind of dangerous, the 65 miles an hour, pay attention kind, all the way up to the kind of dangerous that earns its own nickname among the people who are paid to drive it. Let's start at number 15. Number 15 is the Bronx Expressway in New York City. It doesn't have a single hairpin turn or a foot of meaningful elevation change, and that is exactly the point. Built in the 1950s for a fraction of the traffic it carries today, the Bronx now moves roughly 165,000 vehicles a day through a 4.7-mile trench with almost no shoulders anywhere along its length. About 1 in 5 of those vehicles is a freight truck, squeezing through lanes designed for a smaller, slower era of American driving. The traffic data firm INRIX has named it the most congested road in the entire country 4 years running, which sounds almost harmless until you understand what happens at the edges of that congestion. Merge ramps built decades before anyone imagined this volume give drivers less than 200 feet to enter traffic already moving at highway speed. In 2021 alone, the stretch near the McCombs Road overpass recorded 13 crashes, 24 injuries, and 1 death. In February 2024, a driver was killed in a collision with a tractor-trailer near Jerome Avenue. A separate crash in 2017 killed 3 people in a single semi-truck collision on this same corridor. Truckers who run the Bronx at night describe the same problem again and again. There is nowhere to go if something goes wrong ahead of you, because the road was never built with anywhere for you to go. Dispatchers who route freight through New York routinely warn drivers to schedule their Bronx crossing for the overnight window specifically to dodge the daytime gridlock, which means some of the heaviest truck traffic this corridor sees happens in exactly the hours when visibility is worst and driver fatigue is highest. Number 14 takes us to Florida and Interstate 4 between Tampa and Daytona Beach. Over a 4-year study period from 2016 to 2019, federal crash data compiled by the fleet safety firm Teletrack Navman recorded 150 deaths along this single 132-mile stretch, a rate of just over one fatality for every mile of highway, the highest of any road examined in that analysis. More recent studies, using different windows of data, have placed the rate even higher, though the exact figure is disputed depending on which years and which methodology you use. What isn't disputed is the cause. I-4 threads directly through metropolitan Orlando, where millions of tourists a year, many of them driving unfamiliar rental cars for the first time, merge without warning into commuter traffic moving at full interstate speed. Add nighttime construction zones that never seem to fully clear, aging overhead lighting, and stop-and-go congestion that can materialize with no visible cause, and you get a highway where the danger isn't a mountain pass or a blizzard. It's simply density, unfamiliarity, and speed, colliding after dark in a corridor that never really quiets down. Orlando alone drew more than 6 million visitors in a single recent year, and a meaningful share of them end up on this exact highway after sunset, tired from a full day at the parks, driving a rental car whose blind spots they haven't learned yet. Number 13 is Interstate 45 in Texas, running from Galveston up through Houston to Dallas. Between 2016 and 2019, this highway recorded a fatality rate of just under 1 death per mile, with Houston alone accounting for 92 of those deaths, more than any other city along the route. The Houston corridor is one of the busiest freight arteries in the entire country, feeding the port and its surrounding industrial belt around the clock. At night, the combination of heavy commercial traffic, aggressive last-second lane changes near the exits, and long, dark stretches between well-lit interchanges has made this one of the routes most frequently flagged by carriers and dispatchers as a highway to avoid outside of daylight hours whenever a schedule allows it. This stretch was once informally ranked as the single deadliest highway in the country before later studies shifted the top spot elsewhere. And locals who drive it every day will tell you the ranking hasn't made it feel any safer. Number 12 brings us to Louisiana, and a 3-mile stretch of Interstate 10 that truckers long ago nicknamed the Devil's Triangle. West of Baton Rouge, between Grosse Tete and the exit at Port Allen, 3 lanes of interstate traffic funnel down into one, right at the approach to a river bridge, with almost no advance warning for a driver unfamiliar with the road. This single bottleneck generates more than 800 crashes a year on its own. A separate study covering 2015 through 2017 found that Interstate 10 had the highest number of fatal crashes anywhere in the state of Louisiana, and poor lighting is cited again and again as a contributing factor in the corridor's nighttime collisions. Picture it from behind the wheel of a fully loaded 18-wheeler doing 65 miles an hour. The lane you're in simply stops existing, with barely enough distance to react before the merge is already behind you. The stretch through New Orleans, further east along the same interstate, records its own high count of fatal accidents for similar reasons: elevated roadway, limited sight lines, and a concentration of traffic that never fully thins out, even well after midnight. Number 11 is Interstate 95 through Connecticut, a road so consistently deadly that truckers gave it a nickname decades ago and never let it go: Blood Alley. This 112-mile stretch, connecting New York to the Rhode Island state line, has averaged roughly 10 fatalities a year for years running. It's one of the busiest commercial corridors on the entire East Coast. And the danger here isn't isolation, it's almost the opposite of isolation. Constant congestion is punctuated by short stretches where drivers, frustrated after being boxed in for miles, suddenly find open pavement and accelerate hard directly into traffic ahead that hasn't moved at all. Layer in nighttime construction, which rarely seems to stop on this corridor for more than a season at a time. And you get a highway where the killer isn't speed on its own. It's the gap between one driver's speed and everyone else's. Truckers hauling freight between the ports of New York and New Jersey and the rest of New England know this stretch by feel alone. The exact mile markers where traffic tends to seize up without warning. And the exact on-ramps where a driver merging at full speed is about to meet a wall of brake lights they never saw building. Number 10 takes us west to Arizona and Interstate 17, known locally as the Black Canyon Freeway, connecting Phoenix to Flagstaff. One analysis of federal crash data found 103 fatalities along this 146-mile stretch between 2016 and 2019 alone. An earlier 5-year study, covering 2011 through 2015, counted 123 fatalities on the same road, ranking it 4th most dangerous in the entire country by that measure. The highway climbs from roughly 1,100 feet of elevation in Phoenix to nearly 7,000 feet in Flagstaff, and that climb brings sudden, almost violent shifts in weather that catch out-of-state drivers completely off guard. Dry desert pavement giving way to ice and snow within the space of a few highway miles. Arizona's own Office of Highway Safety has pointed to speed, distraction, and a simple failure to understand how quickly those conditions change as recurring factors in the road's fatal crashes, particularly among drivers who assume Arizona means desert heat from one end of the drive to the other. In winter, a trucker can leave Phoenix in a short-sleeve afternoon and reach Flagstaff 2 hours later driving straight into a snow squall, with nothing in between to signal just how fast that transition is coming. Number 9 is Interstate 80 in Wyoming. Specifically the roughly 77-mile stretch between Walcott Junction and Laramie that truckers named the Snow Chi Min Trail decades ago. A grim, half-joking nod to how difficult it can be to get through. 60% of all traffic on I-80 in Wyoming is commercial trucking. On March 26, 2006, a spring blizzard here triggered a 20-vehicle pileup that killed 6 people and shut down a 100-mile section of the highway overnight. On March 1, 2020, a series of crashes near Rawlins involving more than 100 vehicles, triggered by sudden blowing snow and near-zero visibility, killed 3 people and sent roughly 30 more to the hospital in a single afternoon. The wind here doesn't even need a full storm to be dangerous. High-profile vehicles, tractor-trailers chief among them, are routinely closed out of sections of this corridor by crosswinds alone. No snow required at all, just Wyoming doing what Wyoming does across open. Unbroken plains with nothing to slow the gusts down. Locals still tell stories of empty trailers tipping over in a single strong gust with no ice on the road at all. Nothing but wind alone doing the work, which is part of why this corridor earned its grim nickname long before the interstate was even fully paved. Number 8 is U.S. Highway 212 in southeastern Montana, a road locals call, without a hint of exaggeration in their voice, the Highway of Death. It's a favorite route among truckers precisely because it's more direct than the interstate, cutting straight across hill country and through the northern Cheyenne and Crow reservations on its way toward Wyoming. A 10-year safety study conducted by the Montana Department of Transportation documented decades of crashes along this 140-mile stretch, and despite repeated rounds of infrastructure investment, the death toll has continued to climb. It's a rural 2-lane road carrying interstate-level freight traffic with almost none of the interstate's built-in safety margins. No wide shoulders. No median barrier. Nothing but a painted line separating one direction of traffic from the other. Families in the small communities strung along this route have spent years pushing the state for further safety upgrades, and while some sections have since been widened or resurfaced, the nickname has stuck stubbornly to the road itself, passed down from one generation of local drivers to the next. Number 7, and we're staying in Montana, is U.S. Highway 2. Sometimes called the High Line, running more than 660 miles across the very top of the state, from the North Dakota border to Idaho. It has more fatal crashes than any other road in the entire state of Montana, averaging 13 a year. What makes it especially unforgiving isn't only the crash rate itself. It's what happens in the minutes after. Because the road runs through such remote country, the average ambulance response time along the High Line is 80 minutes. On a highway like this, the crash is only the first emergency a driver faces. The second is simply the waiting that follows it, alone on a dark shoulder, with nothing around for miles. Montana as a whole records one of the highest per capita traffic fatality rates in the country, and safety officials repeatedly point to two compounding factors along the High Line specifically: seatbelt use that lags well behind the national average, and stretches so remote that a driver can go the better part of an hour without seeing another set of headlights, day or night. Number 6 is the Tail of the Dragon, an 11-mile section of U.S. Highway 129 straddling the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. It packs 318 curves into those 11 miles, an average of nearly one sharp curve every 60 yards of pavement. It's better known among motorcyclists and sports car drivers chasing the thrill of it than among commercial haulers. But between 2010 and 2012, this short stretch still recorded more than 200 truck crashes, 6 of them fatal. Freight drivers who have no real choice but to run this route treat it the way a tightrope walker treats a sudden gust of wind, with total unbroken attention from the first curve to the last, because the road offers absolutely no room for anything less. Freight drivers running this route at night lose the one advantage daytime tourists have: the ability to see the next curve coming from the shape of the tree line, and are left reading nothing but the small reflective markers bolted to the guardrail, curve after curve after curve. Number 5 is Wolf Creek Pass on U.S. Highway 160 in southwestern Colorado, the road we opened with tonight. The west side of the pass descends at a sustained 7% grade for roughly 8 miles, funneling into 2 dangerous hairpin curves near the bottom. Colorado State Patrol data from 2015 to 2021 recorded 54 semi-truck crashes on that western descent alone, 3 of them fatal. 2 runaway truck ramps sit on that slope specifically to catch a rig whose brakes have started to fail. The lower one, positioned just above the worst of the hairpins, is known informally among drivers as the last chance ramp, and DOT runs an entire safety campaign built around a single blunt line: if you overbrake it, you won't make it. Its name and its warning tell you everything about what happens to the drivers who miss it. State troopers who patrol this stretch say the danger rarely announces itself as weather at all. Most of these crashes happen on clear, dry pavement, purely from brakes overheating on a downgrade that simply never lets up long enough for them to cool. Number 4 is Cabbage Hill, also called Deadman Pass, a stretch of Interstate 84 in northeastern Oregon between Pendleton and LeGrand. Heading west, the highway drops nearly 2,000 feet of elevation across just 6 miles, a sustained 6% grade that ends in a double hairpin turn with almost no warning for a driver who has never run it before. According to Oregon's Department of Transportation, 78% of crashes on this stretch involve out-of-state trucking companies, drivers who simply don't know, in their gut, exactly how much this hill is about to demand of them. 59% of those crashes traced directly back to brake failure. In December 2012, a tour bus lost control on the descent and crashed, killing 9 people, the deadliest single accident this stretch has ever recorded. Truckers now stop voluntarily at a designated brake check area near the summit, touching their drums and rotors with a bare hand before committing to the descent. Because word travels fast in this industry about what happens to the drivers who don't bother to check. At the bottom of the grade, in Pendleton, vendors have sold t-shirts for years that simply read, "I survived Cabbage Hill." A joke that only works because everyone who's driven it understands exactly why it isn't really a joke at all. Number 3 is Interstate 70 through the Colorado High Country, specifically the 90-mile stretch between Golden and Vail, which includes the climb to the Eisenhower Tunnel, sitting at over 11,000 feet, the highest point on any interstate highway in the entire country. The approach grades run 6 to 7% for miles at a time, among the steepest sustained grades found anywhere on the interstate system nationwide. The Lower Straight Creek runaway ramp just west of the tunnel is the single most heavily used escape ramp in the United States, according to the Colorado Department of Transportation. State Patrol data tracks roughly 900 to 1,000 crashes a year along this mountain corridor, about 15% of them involving a commercial vehicle. Riding the service brakes instead of using engine braking on the way down is the single most common mistake drivers make here. And on a 7% grade, brake fade doesn't offer you a second warning. It gives you one, and then it hands you a fully loaded truck with no way left to slow it down. The Eisenhower Tunnel itself sits at 11,158 feet, and Colorado's Transportation Department meters traffic at both portals during peak travel, holding vehicles at the entrance for an average of 20 minutes at a time, simply because a stalled vehicle inside the 2-lane bore, which has no shoulder at all, would leave emergency crews with almost no way to reach it. Number 2 is the $1 Million Highway, the 25-mile stretch of U.S. Route 550 between Ouray and Silverton in Colorado's San Juan Mountains. It climbs to 11,018 feet at the summit of Red Mountain Pass, on grades as steep as 8%, through a series of tight switchbacks cut directly into the face of the mountain. For long sections, there are no guardrails at all, a deliberate choice going back decades. Because early guardrails left snowplow crews nowhere to push the roughly 300 inches of snow this stretch of the San Juans receives every single winter. 70 named avalanche paths cross the highway in the 23 miles between the two towns, some of them still active in a matter of hours after a heavy storm. Estimates place the death toll on this road at more than 400 since 1992. Local drivers have a simple, unwritten rule for the $1 Million Highway, repeated so often it's practically law. Once the sun goes down, you don't need to be up here. The road's own name carries a dispute nobody has ever fully settled. Some say it cost $1 million a mile to build back in the 1880s. Others say the fill dirt used to grade it was later found to contain $1 million in gold ore. A newer, less romantic version claims 3 separate contractors submitted bids in the 1920s that, added together, came out to exactly $1 million. Whichever story you believe, none of them make the drive down from Red Mountain Pass feel any less like it's daring you to slip. And number 1. The road more truckers name than any other when asked which highway they refuse to run after dark. The Dalton Highway in Alaska, also known as the Hall Road. It runs 414 miles from just north of Fairbanks to Deadhorse on the shores of the Arctic Ocean. Much of it a 2-lane gravel road with no center line and, for long stretches, absolutely no cell service of any kind. Fuel is available at exactly 3 points along the entire route. Somewhere out there you cross the Brooks Range at Atigan Pass, elevation 4,739 feet, where fog and black ice can appear with almost no warning even in the middle of summer. Regulations require every vehicle on the Dalton to run with headlights on at all times, day or night, because visibility out here can collapse that fast. And that fast is not an exaggeration. Truckers have given the road's worst sections their own names over the decades. Places like Oil Spill Hill, the roller coaster, and one hairpin curve so unforgiving that drivers simply call it "Oh Shit Corner." In August 2018, Joy Wiebe, the Dalton's only female fuel tanker driver at the time and a 13-year veteran of this exact stretch of highway, died in a rollover roughly 30 miles south of Deadhorse. She was widely regarded by the people who drove alongside her as one of the most careful and most experienced drivers on the entire road. Her death was the 6th trucking fatality on the Dalton in 10 years. If 13 years of experience and a reputation for caution weren't enough to guarantee she came home, then nothing about simply being careful is a complete safety plan up here. On the Dalton, caution is the minimum entry fee, not the guarantee. The road was built in 1974, in a matter of months, as a supply line for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline that still runs beside it for nearly the entire 414 miles. And it was never intended to welcome tourists at all. It exists for one reason only: to keep the oil fields at Prudhoe Bay supplied, and every trucker who runs it knows that the road doesn't care whether that reason is worth the risk on any given night. It simply is what it is, mile after frozen mile. So what do these 15 roads actually have in common? It's rarely just one single factor. It's steep, sustained grades paired with brake systems that were never designed to hold a fully loaded trailer for 6 or 7 straight miles without a brake. It's bottlenecks where 3 lanes become one with almost no advance warning for a driver seeing it for the first time. It's isolation so complete that help, if it comes at all, arrives an hour and 20 minutes too late to matter. And in nearly every single case on this list, one detail keeps repeating itself. These roads are hardest to survive specifically after dark, when black ice is invisible until the moment you're already sliding on it, when a runaway ramp's entrance is one missed headlight beam away from being passed by entirely, when the driver behind the wheel has been awake for 16 hours and the white line on. The pavement has stopped being the only thing standing between the truck and the edge of the mountain. Most of these highways are still fully open today, still carrying the freight that keeps grocery store shelves stocked and small towns supplied. Because in almost every case, there simply isn't another route that works. Some of them, like Wolf Creek Pass and Cabbage Hill, have gotten new runaway ramps and dedicated brake check stations in just the last few years, built directly in response to the crashes that came before them. Others, like the Dalton Highway, have barely changed in 50 years, because the terrain itself doesn't really allow for much else to be built. The infrastructure keeps slowly improving, one ramp and one warning sign at a time. The roads underneath it do not get any less steep, any less remote, or any less unforgiving of a single missed brake check, one blizzard, or one moment of overconfidence in the dark. We open tonight with a truck driver on Wolf Creek Pass who passed his last chance to slow down and didn't know it in time. Nobody sets out to miss that chance. That's what makes these roads what they are. It's almost never one dramatic, reckless decision. It's 100 small, ordinary ones, made correctly, mile after mile, until just once, somewhere out there in the dark, one of them isn't. If you've driven any of these roads yourself, day or night, tell us which one down in the comments. And if there's a highway you think deserves a spot on this list that we missed, let us know that too.